Hi everyone, it's Becky here. Welcome to another new video on my YouTube channel, and today I'm on my way to downtown Vancouver. I'm gonna first have lunch at Cottage Deli cafe and then going shopping at the art supply store nearby. Here I'm outside Burrard SkyTrain station and I really like this mural on the exterior wall of the commercial building. I'm in Gastown, Vancouver now, and the Harbor Center is right behind me. And the steam clock here, it really makes me happy every time that I pass by. Here I'm walking into the courtyard where the Cottage Deli cafe is located in the very back, very close to waterfront. Here I'm inside the super nostalgic interior. Today I am gonna sit upstairs. So I'm here pretty early today and the upstairs sitting area is just vacant. The brick walls are always very calming with the warm and soothing colors. So here is my simple setup for filming YouTube videos. I have the gooseneck tripod clamped to the table edge. And then I just attach my iPhone 8 Plus right on top. And now, first of all, I want to sketch my lunch. I ordered a ham and cheese sandwich and a cup of latte. So first of all, I am sketching this triangular prism shape of this half sandwich. It has a thickness, and now I'm drawing the loose air bubbles on the surface, and then starting to draw these greens, the lettuce and the arugula in the middle, drawing the triangular top of the other half, and then the thickness, adding some more leaves in between, and the little slices of ham as well. So when drawing these overlapping shapes, I focus on seeing the thing in front of me and not just staring at the paper trying to get every single shape look right. So capturing the essence is about making the things look really convincing, but not necessarily having the exact physical likeness of the thing in front of us. So it is completely all right to have a bit of distortions and also missing a few pieces. In other words, you don't have to draw every single leaf of salad on your plate or every single strand of noodles. And same for here when I'm drawing the patterns on the rim of the dish. I'm just summarizing the floral forms very quickly without making them look exactly the same as in the photo. Now I'm starting to draw the ellipse shape of the opening of the cup, the body part, and the handle, the thin brim, and the liquid line there on top, the foamy texture of the latte, and starting to draw the leafy pattern on here very quickly. It is kind of fun to draw. Alright, now it's time to paint watercolors. So I'm starting with wetting these areas with clear water and then putting on this light wash of yellow-orange. And the color of the crust is a mix of orange and burnt sienna. Just laying it really loosely, leaving some really gentle white gaps in between. So watercolors is a really free-flowing medium that we don't have to paint exactly inside the little shapes. And then putting on the pink color of the ham by grabbing a little bit magenta and dilute it a little bit to get the color of the ham. Lime green, mix it with a little bit of lemon yellow for the leaves. And another trick about using watercolors that you could put a dash in a certain area and then dilute it with a little bit of water right on paper to get the tone that you desire. And then I'm just adding a bit of gray for the surface of the dish. So I mix my own gray with blue, green, and magenta, diluted with a lot of water to get a really soft gray. And I just put a bit of cerulean blue for the florals on the brim and purplish gray around the shallow area of the dish for the surface of the cup. And then using the leftover blues and purples to color and shade the cup. And some final polish, especially for the shadows. Here is a look of my finished sketch. It took me about 15 minutes to draw and paint, and these things are still warm. Yeah, it's nice to see trains passing by outside the window. Lots of seabirds. It's an overcast day, but the sight outside is still pretty inspiring. Now I'm ready to sketch the view outside the windows. So I'm starting to draw the window frame. Yeah, so including one and the third of the other window. Just kind of like an upside down T shape. And then the windowsill, which is made of bricks. So these bricks are a combination of rectangular prisms with gaps in between. And adding some more around the lower bottom right, just to get the feel of this interior with this brick pattern. Now I'm starting to draw the salt and pepper shakers on the windowsill. And this one is the box of the sugar and pepper packets. Right here, yeah, it's a very nice foreground element. And the other shaker bottle, finishing the bottom of the window frame behind the little bottles. And then adding some more diagonal lines like these to suggest the bricks below the salt and pepper shakers. Accentuate the window frame a little bit. Now having a sip of my coffee before moving on to the next step. Now I'm starting to draw the contour outline of the mountains and some seagulls above, just to add some movement and a sense of nature. Drawing these orange colored crayons. This is a really typical site of Vancouver waterfront. There's another one here. Just a bunch of geometrical shapes, like triangles, trapezoids, and a lot of vertical lines. And in the middle of these crayons are the rectangular shapes of the cargo containers. And again, as I mentioned before, you don't have to capture every single container box. Just try your best to get a feel of the stacking boxes there. And some more diagonal lines on the crayons. It's time to move on to the baseline of the mountain here. Starting to add these buildings of North Vancouver and West Vancouver in the distance. So I'm using these simple and abstract shapes, mostly squares and rectangles, and very gentle pressure to suggest buildings in the very far distance, and some cargo ships there on the left side. To add these lamp posts. Now I'm starting to draw the freighter trains. These are tube shapes or very long rectangular prisms that I could see. I see 3 sides of each box. Now I am drawing these gas tanks. So these are cylinders laying down on the railway. Yeah, so just get this done, and then some more box shapes. Another row of freighter trains in the foreground. And now just starting to add the texture that suggests the 3 dimension of these shapes. The rusting surface of the gas tanks. And adding these smaller details like the lamppost by the harbor. The Canadian flag, and keep extending my drawing to the right side of this sketch. Some more freighter train boxes and gas tanks. And my lines and hand gesture are always quick and loose because I think we don't have to be crystal clear of every single detail out there. Finishing the contour outline of the mountain here on the right side, more lamp posts, and little mechanical details, another crayon. And final bits of details. And I want to add another seagull just to add balance for this sketch. This freighter train is super long. Now taking a little break by sitting for 5 more minutes and drinking more of my coffee, I'm ready to paint watercolors. So the very first step of painting watercolors is actually wetting the areas. I'm starting to paint the sky, so just wetting it with clear water, just so the color of grays could stay really translucent and free-flowing with the pull of water and gravity. I think the sun is coming out behind the clouds, so I see a mellow glow on the surface of the sea. Here I am applying a really thin and diluted layer of cadmium yellow, diluted, for the bottom of the sky and also for the surface of the sea. Okay, so the sky area is wet, but not flooding wet. It's just moist. So the wet into wet watercolor technique, it seems pretty easy, but we really do need to be aware of how wet the water or the paint is on the surface. So if it's flooding wet, it's not ideal to do the wet into wet. So now I am just waiting for like a minute or so for that sky area to dry a little bit from wet to moist. Now, okay, so the wetness is just right for a good soft blending of shade colors for the clouds. This is my own mix of bluish gray with ultramarine blue or cobalt blue mixed in with a little bit of royal purple. So as you can see, the wetness of the previous layer is not way too wet or too dried. So this is the effect that I want to achieve with these layers of cloud shades. Okay, so I think that's it for the sky area. Now I'm just sort of wetting the mountain and the city area with a little bit clear water and getting ready for some more wet into wet effects. So just wetting the surface of these freighter trains and the gas tanks with a little bit of mellow yellow as well, to give these objects a bit more warmth. So even on an overcast day like this, there's always sunshine coming through the thick clouds and reflecting the mellow yellow tone onto objects in the world. Just adding a little bit of finer renderings for these layers of clouds. And now I'm ready to paint the mountains. So I'm mixing yellow ochre and viridian green, containing a high ratio of yellow ochre for the first layer of these mountains. So painting several layers in watercolors is really important to achieve a sense of depth. So now, second layer for these mountains is kind of like a turquoise green color, especially for the mountains in the distance. They look more turquoise and blue. And for the mountains in the foreground is more of a common kind of green. Viridian green mixed in with a little bit of a yellow ochre and some turquoise green in between, using these choppy brushstrokes to suggest the form of foliage. So as you can see, I am not painting every single spot of the previous layer. This is the way that I give a sense of depth to my watercolor paintings. Then when you're adding a new layer on top, you don't have to cover up every single area of that previous layer. This is the trick to give a sense of depth, especially when we're painting solid objects like mountains. And I'm also suggesting the feel of nature, that there's always air moving around the mountain bodies. And I think that's it for the mountains. It's time to move on to the next cluster of objects. I'm starting to add this vibrant orange-red for the crayons. So these crayons are now looking really powerful in front of the mountains because red and green are complementary colors, and when they're side by side or in front or behind one another, they are making the painting look more powerful. So to paint in these thin areas of Korean brackets, I just used the very tip of my round brush, holding the brush in a 90-degree angle above the paper. So I end up with very thin brush strokes using the very tip of the brush. And some more thin but juicy red brush strokes. And adding a bit of shade color in between those boxes. And then also the color of the mountain, the negative space in between those boxes. And now it's time to move on to paint these freighter trains and gas tanks. So most of these boxes are of a vintage green and red-brown color. And these gas tanks in the middle and in the front are mostly grayish tones. And I like to mix my own gray with blue, green, and a bit of royal purple. These ones are more of a greenish gray, as I feel. So I very rarely use black and dilute it with water to paint gray objects. I like to observe more deeply and feel what kind of gray that is. It could be a greenish gray, bluish gray, purplish gray, or brownish gray. And I also like to control the amount of water that I mix into these grays. So it seems like that I'm using a lot of colors, but it's actually the water control. So that's it for the view outside the windows. Now I'm ready to paint these bricks. The first layer for the brick is a mix of yellow ochre and a little bit of orange. Second layer, wet onto wet, some burnt sienna. Super loosely, just so I'm creating a sense of relief. Yeah, so areas in the foreground, they need to look more dynamic with vibrant colors and also a sense of three-dimension. And using the leftover bluish gray and also purplish gray on top to paint the window frames, leaving the top edge white to show the shine of the metallic bars. And quickly painting the salt and pepper shakers, the inner wall of the box. And grabbing some dark sepia to paint the gaps in between each little brick. And that's the end of my sketching session. Here is the look of my finished sketch. And now the cafe is getting more busy. It's lunch hour. And the weather outside is also getting much better now. There's blue sky. The sunshine is back. Mountains are looking really dynamic. YouTube video.
Yeah, okay.
Good. So thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. Here I am on my way home on the SkyTrain. See you very soon next time in the next video. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.